Hello, people of the world watching internet videos that have to do with cars. Welcome to this. My 1974 Toyota Celica ST with the V8 out of my dad's old Toyota Tundra under the hood. If you're new and you like to get caught up on the last video where I worked on this car, up above my head is either a link to it or it could be a video on penguin teleportation rituals. Alright, picking up where I last left off. For the final electrical wiring hookup, what I need to do is remove the fuse from every single one of these circuits and incrementally add them and test to make sure that they all function. The original fuse box location for this car pertains to everything ECU or interior related, and the one in the engine bay, which is wired to exactly the same spec as a 1985 Toyota Celica, pertains to everything that is engine or front electrical, exterior lights, etc. related. Before I can do anything though, this right here is the internal circuit breaker. I'm using a self-resetting circuit breaker that comes right off the main battery line from the trunk to the front of the car, and this will go to the interior fuse box. Squish. Need something smaller. Man, I'm always out of the size that I need. This battery relocation transferred 46 pounds from the very front to the rear of the car. My homemade bracket and about $600 worth of hardware. Customize the hardware so it doesn't spin. By notching one side of the nut, not only does it give me enough clearance to be able to fit them on the back side of the breaker, but it also kind of creates a captured nut. Wrap it, and that I don't need a wrench to hold one side, put the lids on when I go to tighten it down. And that right there is the finished product, my can lambda and breaker panel. So this is gonna get tucked right up underneath the dash. You won't really see it because this is all gonna be blocked by HVAC ducting as well as a shelf that bolts on over this area and a little piece of trim vinyl. Regardless though, I wanna make sure it looks as best as possible because why would you ever want it to look like crap? That's the easy part. Now the hard part. When I did the initial first start on this, everything engine related functioned as it needed to for the engine to run. However, there was a couple little issues with the wiring. What are you doing? See it? F around and find out. You're lucky there's nothing gross in there. You stink now. Stay put. In theory, this should all still be wired up correctly. I didn't change anything, I just disconnected some stuff. Alright, I'm gonna test and see if I have any current draw. I should not, since I have all the fuses disconnected. Seems fine, so we'll start incrementally connecting. Good. All I did was I took the engine out to paint the engine bay, so nothing really electrically was changed. Got 12 volts, battery's a little low, I should charge it. Weather is crazy. It's starting to get cold out there. Since I don't have my brake switch hooked up, I should get brake lights here in a second. As well as the door light should come on. Yep, good. That's the first time that's worked. That's nice. I'll stuff my carpet behind the brake pedal. I'll keep the taillights off. Keep incrementally adding these fuses back. Everything seems alright. Wiring's good. I didn't hook up the front bumper lights or marker lights since I still got to do a cut and buff and polish on the paint of the car. However, my corner lights are now hooked up and I haven't tested those yet. Alright. Oh, I love that incandescent old school white. One last test for the interior fuse circuit and I'll know everything in here is good. I have no idea what they're saying, but it works. That's a good sign. That means that nothing got messed up when I painted the engine bay and took everything apart. As you can see, I have quite a bit of excess, especially with the ECU, and that's unfortunate because that means I need to remove a bulk of this. It's the following day, and the dilemma that I have and why I've been putting this off is because I have to shove quadruple the amount of wiring under the corner of this dash than what was originally there before. Since the bracket for the modern ECU is almost the same shape as the one for the CB radio that used to be here, I thought it would only be fitting to mount the new ECU in its place. To make things even more complicated, I have to shock mount this ECU so it's anti-vibration. I got some little rubber butt plugs. I don't know why we would call it that. Oh, I'm not gonna enjoy this, but it needs to be done. The last thing I want is the wiring harness moving around here in the engine bay while I'm trying to cut the wires all to length. So the best way to keep it in place is to use some big zip ties. Whoa, it's raining out. I didn't expect that. These right here are extra pins and plugs for the Link ECU that I purchased. If you press this little white tab right here, it unlocks this plug and will allow me to pull the wires out individually. And as you can see, some of them are shorter and longer than one another. I do have a map of where all these go just in case, but I really don't want to pull out the wrong wire. In an ideal world, this wouldn't have happened. However, when I started to loom the harness all together, I was left with a bunch of excess here at the ECU. But by doing it this way, I'll have one continuous strand of wire with no cuts or splices. I'm gonna pull these out one by one and number them on my chart just to make sure that I don't screw this up. Brown and green, 5 is red. So all these wires have to go to loom B, and you can see how far apart the pins are. So if all those wires are terminating at various different lengths, then the pins are gonna be bunched up before it goes into the plug, and the wiring is gonna be a mess. This is like an entire day's worth of work that's gonna make maybe 2 minutes of footage on this video. When I first hooked up the ECU, I was more focused with making sure the engine ran and all the sensors functioned the way they were supposed to, but I also did pay attention to not making myself an absolute nightmare when it came to the final looming of this harness. So thankfully it wasn't as bad as it could have been. Magic. It's already the following day. That's a lot of work. It's been so long since I took this stuff apart. I don't even remember how it went together. Moving into a new shop in the middle of this restoration added an extra challenge to it too. I didn't really realize how rough shaped the springs are for the pigtails inside these things since there was so much corrosion in there. I should probably replace that. The horn is in such good shape, I don't want to refinish it if I don't have to. Let's see. Somewhere in a box there is another horn floating around, and when I find it, I'll have to do the same thing to it. I re-zinced the bracket just because it was in pretty rough shape. Oh, this guy mounts right up underneath here, I believe. Tighten AE. There, that's pretty tucked up out of the way. Can't see it. No way. The original horn has a tone adjusting screw to change the sound profile. That's crazy that they were putting those kind of features in cars in 1974. I have to try to shove this terminal through this tiny little grommet. It's a thick boy too. Oh, ha. Easier than I thought. This wire is so much longer than the other. I think it's because I have 2 horns. Yeah, I definitely gotta find that other horn because this is gonna sound weird without it. There. It's time for Side Quest Saturday, even though I'm filming this on a Thursday. Don't worry about that. I had some items that were too complex and could not be disassembled without the risk of ruining them to get them re-zinced, including these rear license plate sockets, which you can see the outer side is completely worn down. So I purchased a kit from a company that makes a kit that does this type of thing. It's obviously not sponsored. I will give them some credit that it's made in the USA. That's pretty neat. Dangerousing, using a ladder and copper. I kept all the CAD board from when I moved, just for the purpose of I would always have a CAD board when I needed it. That doesn't sound good. I don't want to die today. This thing's got a bunch of overspray on it and it's not from me. That's why I repainted the car. Gotta go to my paint booth. Now I know for a fact that doing actual zinc coating is one of the most terrible things that you can ever breathe in. And I know this is spray paint, but either way, I'm definitely gonna make sure I use Nature's paint booth for this. Whilst that dried, I conveniently went and got a haircut. And I mean, it doesn't look 100% like zinc, but it's close enough and it looked better than it did. The spring goes this way, attaches to that there. And now for the satisfying part. The original OEM straps that held the cable in place. Perfect. So this lid was re-zinced. This outer portion is the part I painted, and while you can kind of tell a difference, For where it's gonna live, you won't really be able to tell a difference. Don't mind the mess in my trunk. It's actually super organized. All these parts are very important. Come on. Or I could just snip that off and add a new one on the inside because that's way more intelligent. Wow, I did not think this was gonna be that much of a process to put these things in. Literally just a light. All right, that'll do. Swapping in the Tundra V8 and the standalone ECU actually doesn't have anything to do with the interior wiring of this car. It's all a standalone 2-harness system that doesn't need to integrate because the gauges are independent from that. So I'm trying to think of how I can do this a little different to make it a little bit cleaner underneath here. I'm gonna use the same style mechanical crimp that Toyota used from the factory. That down inside there. Trim it near the W. And heat shrink it. Oh, my spine is gonna feel great today. This is a piggyback terminal. I prefer using these rather than having a bushel of wires back there. These are commonplace on equipment when I was in the Air Force, which was designed when this car was designed. Automotive wiring has come a long way. Good and bad. Like, yeah, obviously more complexity means more things that can fail, but another sheath. I kind of feel like cars from the late 80s, early 90s were the sweet spot of technology. It was dumb enough to be easy, but smart enough to still give you some pretty neat features. Now, because this is a 1974 model year, I believe this was a 1-year only thing that they did for vehicles.
Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard number 208 requires that the safety belt system on all 1974 passenger cars include a starter interlock,
which requires the seat belt to be connected before you can start the vehicle. And I have this plug right here. It's got a ground in this yellow and red circuit, as well as this guy right here. Dangerous thing, dangerous thing. Oh geez! I have the seats up here for the car, and underneath the driver's seat there should be a plug. It's 2 green wires, so I should be able to just jump that. Oh, even the passenger side has that circuit. Dangerous thing, dangerous thing. Like this pole's gonna help me any. After doing some digging around in my old videos, I found the seat belt interlock system. It's the wiring harness for it is up underneath the passenger seat. You can see there's 2 wires that go into the base of this. This is the passenger seat front seat belt. The circuit doesn't just work off of whether or not this is depressed or if there's weight in the seat. The circuit is actually inside the roll where the seat belt comes out of. So as you pull on the seat belt, it triggers a switch in here which lets the car know that the person's wearing their seatbelt. And on top of that, these actually incorporated an inertia switch for in case of a collision back in 1974. Also, another fun thing about this is this circuit doesn't show up in any Toyota tech data. It was likely a port or dealer installed system. So it takes both seatbelts. That's wild. How do I unratchet this? Why is it being stupid? Oh. You know what? That's why it's a 3-wire circuit, because it requires power to unlock the seat belt. So I should be able to test this with a power probe. So if I disconnect the one going to the seat belt, one of these is going to require power, and that will unlock the seat belt. Left to right is open. Top to right is open. Top to left has resistance. Okay, the other side goes to ground. Yep, that goes to ground. So my side wires go to ground. My top wire does not, and that one has the coil on it. So I need to apply power to that top wire. I apply power to the coil and ground to that. The fun part about having absolutely 0 tech data available on this and without disassembling it, that's not working, is merely speculating. I'm just gonna energize. The only thing that I don't have hooked up as original is the sensor in the cushion of the seat. That's the only thing that's not hooked up. Everything worked when I bought this car, so I mean the system's dumb, but a little spark. Oh, the door light. Okay, that's fine. I'm just gonna turn on the key. Okay. It worked when I took the car apart, so can I retract the seat belt? I can retract the seatbelt now. This is one of those situations of if it's not broke, don't fix it until it is. Like, this system works, I'm gonna leave it. Yep, look at that. Passenger side retracts. Completely forgot about putting this thing back on. Now I should have driver's side door light. Good. Those rear lights, sweet. All right, those work. My little bridge wire that I created, and this is kind of hard to do with holding a camera in one hand. Love it. These wires were leftover factory wiring that went to the engine bay that is not being used. Bingo! That is this wire. So this is no longer needed. These wires were for the 18RC. Even though this circuit is no longer used, I'm keeping it wired so in case I ever want to modify it and use it for something different. I don't want to permanently install any of the front lights yet until I do the final cut and buff on the paint and finish up the radiator and oil cooler stuff. But I also need to make sure all the wiring for these marker lights works. What do we got blinking? Yeah, both driver sides good. What? That sucks, and that's good at the same time. The front one blinks, but the rear one doesn't. The bulb is good, so what about the ground? So it doesn't have any voltage at the wire going to this turn signal, but it's showing on the oscilloscope. Speaking of the ground, I should probably clean it. I'm adding a little robot starfish washer. Oh, I stick this back on. Protect your eyes. Do I have a blinker? There's a plug up under the dash that's pretty hard to get to, and I think I unplugged it. Now you can get an idea of why I've been putting this stuff off, because it is super difficult to try to film and put to a YouTube video to make interesting for the masses. That's why most YouTube builds don't show this type of stuff, because it's just thankless work. After 4 full days of work, this went from being an absolute nightmare to now it's just ready to be plugged into its places and put up into the dash, and then the carpet trimmed. Aside from the right rear turn signal, which I'm 99% sure I know what's going on with that, and I need to wire up a reverse light switch on the W58 transmission, it seems like everything else chassis wise in the interior fuse box is good to go. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you soon with another video. Bye!